頭種第82足氷山白椎氷山を夢に見る弥勒のところに生きて第二座にやず一尊者あり白椎して曰く今日第二座の説法にあたるとすなわち立って白椎して曰く魔界の王は四空を離れ百匹を足す大長と Entangling Vines Case 82 Houzan's Gavel. In a dream, Houzan Ejaku went to the place of Maitreya Bodhisattva and was assigned the second seat. One of the venerable monks there struck a gavel and said, "Today, the person in the second seat will lecture on the Dharma." Houzan rose, struck the gavel and said, "The Mahayana teaching transcends the 4 propositions and the 100 negations. Listen carefully. Listen carefully." Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Happy New Year to those who I haven't had a chance to say Happy New Year to. In this snakish year, watch out. Watch out. Weekend Sesshin is such a wonderful offering that exists in this metropolis here that we call New York City. I came by train this time, and so I took the chance to walk from Penn Station to the Zendo. And I deliberately took the route on 34th Street so I could walk by Empire State Building. I was squinting really hard, but there was no large gorilla on top of it. However, it is true, the rats in New York City have grown in size incredibly large. They were cheered on by a number of protesters outside the Empire State Building with air horns and slogans. And the rats I'm referring to, they were inflatable. Have you ever seen those? Anybody? Yeah. There were at least 4 smaller ones and one really fat, big rat looking at that building. And walking up here to the Zendo, then I went over to 3rd Street. First I walked a little bit on Lexington. It is such a wonderful cornucopia of human existence. You meet everything from the smiling, singing person that walks on the street wearing but one boot and the other leg just with a bandana around a naked foot in sub-freezing temperatures, to fur coat wearing specimens of a different socioeconomic place, or at least wanting to appear that way. So amidst this wide spectrum and gamut of human existence, we get together here to sit quietly, to break the silence with our chanting, to eat together and to engage together in this activity of the exploration of what it means to be a human being. And not only that, but a human being who actually is alive and lives their life fully to the utmost extent. And yesterday, in the opening words, liberation came to mind, and so I started talking about liberation, freedom. Freedom and Zen are two words that are incredibly abused nowadays. Products are Zen. This is Zen, that is Zen. I'm sure by now there's Zen cat food. Is there? They should all be called cat food because you don't know what's inside. Freedom, similar. Words are hijacked for agendas. And of course, as practitioners here, we are called to see through not the hijacking of a particular word or a particular kind of idea of humanity, but through the principle of it. Because as the koan today will show us, a lot of it is just how our minds work. Just how they work. These words that are coming out of my mouth, they are just such conventions. That are unfree. So I do exhort and ask you strongly to take these words and to liberate yourselves from them, from any meaning that you might want to ascribe to them. When you think you understand, when you hear and something happens, look at that process of what this sound awakes within you. What is the resonance of it? Where did that come from? So today, once again, we meet Houzan Eijaku. The last couple of koans in this collection, a lot of them had Houzan Eijaku in it. Remember, Houzan Eijaku lived from 807 until 883. So he died in his 77th year. I know it's very little comfort for him, but 77 years is a nice number of years to die at, according to numerology. He was a successor to Isan Reiyu. Houzan and Isan go together like disciple and teacher that truly become one. And the school was founded after them, the Igyo school. I for I-san, Gyo for the first character of Houzan. So this Igyo school. And we don't have to talk about the circles again, the circle figures that appear there, but they were there. I also want to remind you that Houzan Eijaku wanted to become a monk very early in his life, and his parents were opposed to it. So the ordained people, can I see your hands, please? Like this. Okay. Yeah. Nobody here who had the same kind of commitment as Houzan, because his parents said, no, you will not become a monk. I said, okay, let's see about that. I am very serious. He cut off 2 of his fingers. What about now? Yes, yeah, please become a monk. This kid is crazy. He's gonna cut off his whole hand. Or even worse, if he goes to the Zen people, he might cut off his arm. The parents were thinking, let him go. Let him go. Zen is full of unique figures and masters, but Kyozan's uniqueness is in the simplicity of his being. He's just like a child. And Isan and Kyozan were together over 40 years. And Isan took most of the time to make Kyozan awaken. He was so determined when he met the student that he vowed to not drop his physical body until this person who had appeared in front of him had experienced awakening. And Kyozan followed everything that Isan was telling him to do. He went to heaven and hell, but took a very, very long time. And we might ask ourselves, why? Why would it be that a master like Isan would recognize someone like that and spend his whole life rearing that successor? When this young man asked Isan, will you please accept me as a disciple? Isan looked at him and said, I have never rejected anyone. That would be a humiliation. Although I know, looking at you, that it is going to take a long, long time. Of course, I welcome you to become my disciple. If you're ready to go along on this long pilgrimage with me, Isan said, perhaps that what can happen will happen. And at that time, Isan had a large following of ordained folks, over 1,000. And they were puzzled, because most of them were really educated already. They had their degrees in this sutra, in that sutra, from the Vinaya studies, from the studies of whatever you might think of, what the flavors of Buddhism were in China at that time. And here into this great scholarly assembly comes this farmer and is being admitted. Uneducated. He hasn't even heard of the sutras. Why is the master so interested in him? So Isan said to them, today he may not be ready, just like a seed. But tomorrow or the day after, you will know why I have accepted him. I'm trying to serve 2 purposes in a single way. If this man can become a Buddha, then the doors are open for all. That's when he made the promise not to leave his body until Kyozan could satisfy the entire assembly of disciples that the master had not chosen wrongly. So that's Kyozan Eijaku. This koan also appears in Mumonkan, in the Gateless Gate, as case 25. There's only one difference between the two, and that is here in the Mumonkan. Houzan is assigned seat number 3. In this koan here, he is assigned seat number 2. That's the only difference. This koan also does not appear in this in the compilation of the lives of all the ancient masters, the Keitoku Dentoroku, which I point out so often. It's not in there, but it is in the Goto Eigen, the compendium of the 5 lamps. So that's where it comes from. But what is really strange, it talks about the Houzan was, what was he doing? He was dreaming. In a dream, he went to Maitreya's abode. Anybody dreamt on the cushion anything here ever? No? Never? Must just be me then. So Houzan, in a dream, went to the place of Maitreya Bodhisattva and was assigned the 2nd seat. So where does Maitreya Bodhisattva live? The Tsushita heaven, right? Tosotsu, the place where bodhisattvas abide to be reborn as Buddhas. So who is this character, Miroku Busatsu, Maitreya? Who is that? Let's look at him next. Miroku Busatsu, Maitreya, the benevolent one, is the Buddha of the future, who currently resides in the Tosotsu heaven as a bodhisattva, awaiting the final rebirth, which will take place many, many eons after the death of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. Remember, I talked some while ago about the various phases in the life of the Dharma, and where we are in the end, in the declining phase of it, called the Mappo, the last 500 years it's called sometimes. I don't know whose 500 years, because that's already long over and it should have declined completely. But that being afraid of the decline made this Bodhisattva Miroku very, very popular in the time when it was still within those years counted since the Buddha, so 1500 years after the Buddha, about. And so there are many, he became one of the most popular figures in Buddhism, Miroku Busatsu. First of all, everybody looks forward to the future in various ways. When you're sitting here and your legs are killing you, you're looking forward to the future. Monday is inauguration day. When you think about it, you're looking forward to the future, be it what it may. But that's why we like to look forward. Look at the human being. Most of the interesting stuff is in the front. Forward-looking, forward-moving into this, what we call the future. So Miroku received widespread popularity in Japan also because of the Lotus Sutra. And in the Kamakura period, when people believed that the Mappo was there, especially then, having the promise of the rebirth for his devotees in his Tosotsu heaven, while he is a bodhisattva, was quite attractive. And he also promises their presence at his future sermon when he returns as a Buddha. He will lecture 3 times and inaugurate that new golden age of the Dharma. When you see Miroku Bosatsu, it's always a very beautiful face and holding a stupa. That's how he descends from Tosotsu heaven. So there he is, and with him already a good number of people. But still, Maitreya was able to assign Kyozan Eijaku the 2nd seat. Here's it here. Many other venerables were there. One picked up the gavel, struck it. Today, the person sitting here will give the talk. How would you like that if we started doing this here? I think we should start with that tomorrow. How do we choose? How do we choose? So the person in the 2nd seat will lecture on the Dharma. Houzan rose, struck the gavel again, and says, the Mahayana teaching transcends the 4 propositions and the 100 negations. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. Who just awakened? Nobody? What's wrong? You're not intimately familiar with, oh my God, you don't know the 4 propositions and the 100 negations. Shocking. So what is it? The 4 propositions. I think we are in a dilemma here, right? What is a dilemma? What does D and I stand for?
2.
Dilemma. I don't know if I should do this or that, right? That's a dilemma. But of course, Indian philosophy and culture is always up with something that is outdoing everything that was there before. So let's square that and make out of that dilemma a tetralemma. That is how many?
4.
4. The 4 propositions. An example of the Buddhist or going back to the pre-Buddhist Indian philosophy of the tetralemma. Is
the world eternal? The soul eternal?
Is the soul eternal? One expression of it. What's the second one?
Or is it not eternal?
It is not eternal. Or is it neither eternal nor? And the 4th one?
Is it both?
Both.
Is it both? Damn it. That's the tetralemma. Is not. Is and is not. Is not and not is not. A very old philosophical device from India. Why is it put out here? is it really possible to understand it? Remember Malunkyaputta, the story of Malunkyaputta, who was a disciple of the historical Buddha, who wanted to know from Shakyamuni, from the historical Buddha, what about this tetralemma? How do you solve that? You've never spoken about it. And he tells the story about the guy who's hit with the arrow. Remember? Oh, I will not take out the arrow before I know who shot it, if it was a person of high class or of low class, what this wood is made from, and so on, and so on. That's how the Buddha explains it. The solution of the tetralemma is not trying to solve it, but to use it as a device to not be just oppressed by a single point of view. Liberation. It is a liberation device. It is used also by Nagarjuna. And if you ever read Nagarjuna, you will see that his method is to analyze the things so closely that we are no longer stuck on any one thought, any one idea, any one feeling, any one belief. And Houzan, in his childlike approach to this, he was not a seeker. He said, if you are seeking the truth, you have certainly accepted that truth exists. And I am not willing to accept anything just on belief. So I'm just seeking, searching in all directions, trying to come into tune with the universe. It might just be my fallacy, my fantasy, but I want to go without any prejudice. So he was not seeking for, he was just seeking. That means already the tetralemma was no problem for him at all. Not being stuck to any thought, to any feeling or any belief. The teaching of shunyata, of emptiness, ku. When we practice this way and ask ourselves 4 questions, 16 questions, how many ever you want to ask, and we become less and less bound to just seeing everything from that one point of view, then this perception of emptiness becomes our practice, not a belief anymore. We see the emptiness. We don't see it as an object, but we live the emptiness. We live the constant liberation from that what tries to solidify. And sometimes it seems everything is just going swimmingly. It's like turning on the water on a sink and it drains. But there was some knucklehead who complained about that the sink is not draining. But then after a short look, we think, oh yeah, no, it's just going down. But then the knucklehead says, well, just wait a little. And suddenly the sink fills up. So this practice goes everywhere, in whatever we do, not getting stuck on that what tries to solidify. Nagarjuna said, to believe in emptiness is the biggest mistake of all. In Zen terms, we say sometimes somebody who clings to words is dead. Someone who attaches to sentences is utterly lost. So this is the breaking up of the four propositions. If you ever pick up the commentary on the Mumonkan by Shibayama Zenke, the former abbot of Nanzenji in Kyoto, whose nice big calligraphy hangs up in the Dharma Hall, and it says, Taido Mumon, the great way has no entrance. Shibayama Zenke, in his treatment of case 25 of the Mumonkan, speaks about the four propositions and the 100 negations. And he says, the four propositions and the 100 negations are terms used in ancient Indian philosophy and logic. The four propositions are the basic terms: one, many, being, non-being. The 100 negations are reached by saying that each of the basic four terms has four particular negations, making a total of 16. Then by introducing the past, the present, and the future, we have 48. These are doubled as having already arisen or being about to arise, which makes 96. By adding a simple negation of the original four, we have 100 negations. That's where Zenke Shibayama ends. And if we say no to that, we have 200. And then if we say neither no nor yes, you see where this is going? Does this process somehow seem familiar to your mind? The spinning, the spinning, the spinning, the spinning. All of this is happening in a dream. When we are pulled into that vortex of the spinning, doesn't it sometimes seem like a pretty lousy dream? So, I don't know if you remember those who went to Daibosatsu Zendo. In the Kaisando, the Doksan room, above the Buddha, there is a single character carved in wood. And the character is, of course, Yume. Yume, which means dream. Yume. That could be a reference to a very famous Rinzai Zen monk by the name of Takuan Soho. Have you ever heard of Takuan Soho? You have probably eaten the yellow pickles, right? They're called takuan. It's ascribed to him that he supposedly invented that way of pickling. I'll tell you something about takuan. Takuan lived from 1573 until 1645, and at the height of his career, he was the abbot of Daitokuji, a very big temple in Kyoto. And also Shibayama Zenke points this out, and I borrow from him here, is that it was customary at the time before one of those masters dies, to write a death poem. And Takuan just wouldn't do it. But they bugged him and bugged him and bugged him. So then he said finally, all right. He sat down and he wrote one character. Yume, dream, and died. It was quite interesting. He refused to give anyone Dharma transmission. Dharma does not depend on an unbroken lineage of transmission, he said. Don't forget that. Dharma is not dependent on that. Institutions are, traditions are, but Dharma is not. He actually says his final instructions, he refused to write a death poem, but he gave final instructions. And his final instructions were saying, I have no disciple who has succeeded to my Dharma. After I am dead, if anyone says they are my heir, that person is a Dharma thief. Report them to the authorities and see that they are punished severely. His teaching was about the right mind, which he called the mind of no mind. A mind that doesn't alight anywhere, is not placed anywhere, but rather moves about freely in all directions, and neither congeals nor fixes itself on one place. Takuan is known for having been involved with the sword fighting community, you know. He himself was the child of a Japanese samurai who lost his status and became a ronin during that time. And he became a monk. He says that any place of abiding and stopping of the mind is a delusion and an affliction of ignorance. A mind that really attaches itself to any kind of place is not able to function freely and therefore is not liberated. For instance, Takuan did point out, if we just put our mind into one direction, the remaining 9 are left out. Put it nowhere, and it will be everywhere. And to illustrate that point, he developed that teaching of looking at a tree, or using a tree as a metaphor for how this whole thing works. So when you look at the tree, and if you fixate your gaze on a single leaf, then all the other leaves will just disappear and be invisible to your mind. But if you don't just fixate, limit your gaze onto one leaf, and you look at the entire tree with all its leaves, and you see it simultaneously. It's very much like the 1,000 arm Kannon, you know? The 1,000 arm Kannon, all those arms simultaneously are useful because Avalokiteshvara's mind is not just fixated on one of those arms. Kannon doesn't sit there with the 1,000 arms and thinks about, oh, my nose is itchy. Which one of my 1,000 arms should I use to scratch myself? Should I use this one? No, I just scratched another place that I'd rather not bring near my face. No, that doesn't happen. Not abiding, not fixating, but opening up to that focus. That is 360 degrees spherical. He also taught Takuan. Hakuin, and everything in the heart. Very helpful to learn it. But even Takuan, who lived centuries before Hakuin, already spoke about that practice and said, viewed from the highest vantage point of Buddhism, putting the mind just below the navel and not allowing it to wander is a fairly low level of understanding, not a high one. If you consider putting your mind below your navel and not letting it wander, your mind will be taken by the mind that thinks of this plan. You will have no ability to move ahead and will be exceptionally unfree. So this points us to how we have to take these various teachings that we encounter and not let them congeal us as well. It's very important that we learn to sit up, that we learn how to breathe into the hara, but then we cannot just use the hara as a chi or ki savings account, you know, that we keep it in there, not give it away. The market is out here. This is like money under the mattress. It will never carry any interest. And if you wait too long, it will start deteriorating. So it's important not to hold on to any of those teachings. Joshu Roshi, my ordination teacher, he always was just teaching us not to hold on to any of this. And his teaching was quite interesting. Many people think these kind of masters teach in a very difficult way. So once there was a student, one of his very first oshos, priests that he made later, and he was working on a koan that had to do actually, I think, with the tetralemma. And the student was really, really getting into it. And he was a person who studied psychology with Fritz Perls. So, very bright guy. He just died last year. It was Houzan Osho. Houzan Mark Jocelyn. And he told this story to many of us. So he was really involved in that koan. And then in the morning, while he was thinking of it, he saw the Roshi sit in a chair in the tea room behind his Asahi Shimbun, the newspaper. And he thought, now he's in the corner I have him cornered now. I will go over and I will ask him, I will tell him about that tetralemma, what I've come up with. And he walked over to him and said, Roshi. And he put the newspaper down, looked at him and said, no Roshi here. Only old Japanese man reading newspaper. And put the newspaper up and ignored him completely. Not be stuck to anything. Not be stuck to doing shikantaza. Just sitting. No. Just doing what you're doing and nothing else. If it's reading the newspaper, if it's eating, sleeping, all of it. The best way with the tetralemma is to lie down and fall into a nice dream about something else. Our minds should not be detained by thoughts, says Takuan. For in that case, although one listens, one will not be able to hear. And though one looks, one will not be able to see. On the other hand, he also said, well, if you are trying to remove your thoughts, then you're just becoming preoccupied with the thought of removing thoughts. Instead, he told his students that if one does not think about it, the mind will remove these thoughts on its own and come to the condition of no mind just by itself. Let's not get caught in any kind of notion that anything we're doing here is special. Magic. No magic. Not special. It's exactly those ideas that we have to do something special or we have to wait for something special to happen that keep us from just being right here, right now. It's not easy though, because we as human beings, we have not only ideas, but I think a natural sense of what is right, what is benevolent, what is not harmful. All of this is not meant to say, don't care about doing right by your fellow human beings, because it doesn't matter, right? No. We have to take this not being stuck to the idea of goodness or of benevolence or the idea of improvement. Let's not improve anything but our presence, because I firmly connect with my experience that ultimately the core of this human movement of consciousness and of evolution as it has shown itself around us, that's going the way it's supposed to go. If we worry about what will happen, we won't be able to be the way we are. Unique, radiant, free. Free to be not oppressed by the wishes of those who want others to be unfree. If there were a color to each of those ages that we heard about, ending in the Mappo, the decline of the Dharma, I am certain the color for the decline of the Dharma, or the following age when everything is lost, is orange. Let's be who we are. Let's open that up wherever it leads us. Don't be caught by this tradition either. Liberate yourself. And if you are someone like me, in that liberation, I truly choose to be here. And I'm very grateful that you are here too. Choose carefully. And listen carefully. So you can hear. Look carefully. So you can see. And then when you're liberated,